Welcome to another Dreams to Reality podcast. And yes, we are over Zoom again because we are in lockdown. And today I'm bringing a very special guest from a different field to what we're used to really on this podcast. So today we've got Hayley Mortimer. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. So quick question, just for everyone, because I could explain it, but I'd probably do a terrible job. If you was on holiday and people say, Hayley, what do you do for a job? What is it that you do?
So I'm a political reporter for the BBC and I cover Gloucestershire. So I mainly work for the local radio station, BBC Radio Gloucestershire, but I also do some bits and pieces for the regional TV, which is Points West, and also the online team as well. So I cover everything politically that goes on in the county of Gloucestershire. So that's what our MPs are up to, councils, the NHS, the police, the fire service, and everything in between. So yeah, pretty big remit and it keeps me busy.
At least you'd always have a job because there's always something going on, I guess.
This is true.
With that said, how old are you quickly, Hayley?
I actually turned 30 last year, but it happened during lockdown. So I didn't celebrate properly. So technically it doesn't count. So I'm still 29. That's what I tell myself.
There you go. With that said, you're 30, relatively young. How long have you been doing what you're doing? How long have you been working for the BBC?
So I've been at the BBC now for coming up to 5 years,
5 years.
but I've been a journalist for 7 years. So I started straight after I finished university, always in Gloucestershire though, worked in local newspapers and then, into the BBC.
Okay. What uni did you go to?
I went to De Montfort in Leicester.
Okay, nice. And you was doing journalism there, I guess?
Yes, yeah. So I studied journalism and then we had like an extra qualification on the side that sort of in the industry is sort of well regarded. So that then helped me get my first job in newspapers.
Right. So if there's one thing I hear when people do journalism is it's a hard market to get into it. How did you find that whole process from transitioning from university to then actually getting a job and being paid for it, then obviously to finally end up at the BBC doing what you're doing in Gloucestershire? How was that transition? Was it harder than you thought it was going to be? Was it easier? What did you learn in that whole kind of process?
Yeah, I found it really hard. So as I was coming up to my graduation, we were encouraged to apply for like graduate schemes
Okay.
on the big national papers. And I applied for them all and it was just rejection after rejection, got a couple of interviews. They got hyped me up thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to get this. And then I get rejected again. So I felt like really sort of disheartened thinking I'm not good enough. And then colleagues who worked in local newspapers where I'd done some internships said, look, you can start local, like it's the best training ground that there is. So for me, I started thinking, right, it's going to be my training ground. And then I really want to go to London and work at a big newspaper. But I've absolutely fallen in love with covering local news and really knowing what's going on in my local area, which is why I've stayed here ever since.
Are you from Gloucester? Where are you originally from?
I'm actually from Somerset originally, from
Somerset.
Taunton. But I moved to Gloucestershire when I was 18, literally the week after I finished my A levels because of my dad's work. So that was a bit of a struggle going from having my comfort zone of all my friends at college, then being dragged away up the M5 to knowing nobody. But yeah, it's been a good move. And
how did you deal with that being 18 and going through that whole kind of process? Because if I remember, well, I'm 30 this year. So I guess when back then we still had social media and MSN and we still have ways of communicating with people. But how did you find that? Was it a good move or did you struggle?
I struggled. I mean, I was furious with my parents for moving me away from all my friends and my boyfriend at the time. But you know what? It's life, and I think it was a good move for me because it pushed me out of my comfort zone. It forced me to make new friends and to And although my options were limited because I wasn't in sort of education, which is your traditional place to meet friends, it meant that I had to go and get a weekend job over the summer so that I could meet people through work. And I just worked in a clothes shop just so I could get to meet people. So it was a lesson for me of sort of just being out of my comfort zone and meeting people again.
I guess, would you say you're relatively a confident person?
I've been thinking about this, and on the outside, I think I do come across very confident.
Because you kind of have to, right, in your job, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you want to feel like you know what you're talking about, that you know what you're doing.
Think the confidence. There you go.
Exactly. But I've definitely got this thing called imposter syndrome.
Okay.
And it's where there's always this thought in my mind of like, I shouldn't be here. I'm not good enough to do this. And I'm going to get caught out soon. Somebody's going to realize that I'm not good enough.
You know what? Yeah, that's fascinating actually, because I do that as well. I think, God, I'm doing really well. Everything's going perfect, but what if something goes wrong? And just self-doubt though, I guess. But with that said, then, as you said, in your job, you think you're confident. Or even if you act it, if like, I'm one of these people, I go and talk to say 1,000 people, feel amazing, but then after I gotta have my own time. I gotta, be in my own kind of state, my own zone, and I'd rather talk in front of 1,000 people, believe it or not, or than have a one-to-one conversation with someone. I feel like I'm really awkward. Even now, it's still kind of it's game time. It's like I'm in the zone. This is what I do. But then after, I'm like, okay, it's done now. Back to being somewhat shut off in a way. I struggle with that, to be fair. I do. So do you think confidence is, just as you kind of we're talking about, do you think you can learn confidence?
I think so. So a little bit about my background. I didn't always want to be a journalist.
Okay.
I spent the first 18 years of my life wanting to be a singer and a dancer. I was obsessed with the theatre, and I wanted to be on the West End stage. I wanted to be performing. Absolutely loved it. It was literally my whole life for 18 years. And then it all fell apart because basically I wasn't good enough, and didn't go where I wanted to go. I didn't get the auditions that I was going for, and I had to make a decision to let that dream go and focus on something else. But it taught me so much. Like, yes, I was chasing a dream that didn't happen, but that chase gave me skills that I now use in my life, and it's in all that confidence building that it gave me in my teenage years of performing, of learning to be motivated, committed to something. It all helped as an adult now. So that's why I do think growing up, all the education is absolutely fantastic, but all the extracurricular stuff is what really helps you build your confidence. And I was so lucky that I was able to do so much of that, because that has shaped who I am now.
That's amazing. They say if you shoot for the stars and miss, you land on clouds. And I think along that whole process, you build and develop who you are. I was the same. I played American football, wanted to get a scholarship, go to the States, and I simply, once again, wasn't good enough and tall enough. But at the same time, I learned so much skills along the way to allow me to do what I'm doing today. That's fascinating. Do you still enjoy theatre and things like that?
I do. It took me a long time to enjoy it again. I've only bought a piano again this year, because I associated a lot of it with sort of those bitter feelings of failure, really. So it's only been in the last few years that I've been able to sort of turn sort of what was quite a negative time in my life in terms of not doing what I wanted to do, but turning it into the positive and recognizing what it gave me as an adult. But I mean, I don't think it would be something that I would pick up again in adult life. But I can look back on it, and it was fun as well. I had a great time. So yeah,
there you go.
I enjoy it. I enjoy watching rather than taking part now.
I know. I don't know. Are you a fan of Disney at all?
Yeah, love a Disney film.
What's your favorite remake of a Disney? Or what's your favorite remake? Because obviously there's quite a few now, isn't there? There's Beauty and the Beast, there's The Lion King.
Oh,
Um,
Cinderella. I liked
you like
Cinderella
Cinderella?
remake. Yeah. And
And
Beauty and the Beast was good.
Mary Poppins, that was
I haven't seen
class.
that one.
You not see Mary Poppins?
No.
You got
Are
to
you a
watch
big
it.
Disney fan?
I have to. I got kids. I got
Yeah.
kids. But I think my favorite is Aladdin. Have you seen Aladdin with Will
No, I
Smith?
haven't.
Oh my. Next interview we'd
Okay,
do,
I'll
next
put it on my
podcast we'd
list.
do. Yeah, it's incredible. Okay, so did you travel? Did you travel to uni? You said you was in Leicester for university. Was that relatively more easier traveling to uni because you've already kind of done it once?
Yeah, so because I'd moved away from like my support network of college friends, it was actually quite nice to go to university because I knew that I was going to be thrown in with people, and
Got
it would
you.
be a new opportunity to meet people. So yeah, it was great, and everyone's in the same boat. So it's
Yeah.
not like when I moved to Gloucestershire, I was trying to force myself into established friendship groups.
Mm,
Whereas in university,
yeah.
everybody's in the same boat. It was still daunting though, don't get me wrong. And then being away from my parents, I hadn't been away from them before. So having to learn how to
Yeah.
look after myself was tough. But yeah, it's nice knowing that everybody's in it together, aren't they, at uni?
Mm. Would you say you've grown kind of much for that whole experience of uni as well? Did you do anything in that time to separate yourself from everybody else? Because I guess you'll be on a course with people who are doing the same as you, and essentially they're your
Yeah.
friends, but it's still competition because you're all kind of going for the same jobs. Um, did you do much to separate yourself? Did you gain any more experience in that time? How did your kind of whole uni experience go for you as far as the education, essentially, not the going out?
Yeah, so yeah, the going out. I mean, that was great too. No, it was good. It was a small group of us that studied journalism. I know there are some courses where there's hundreds of you.
Mm,
So it was a nice community. But of course, there is that element of knowing that the job market is really tough.
yeah.
So what can I do during this time other than just partying to feel like I've grown and to put myself ahead of other people? I did a lot of unpaid work experience
Okay.
placements, and that I think definitely helped me because the education's great, but it's what you see from being in a newsroom and actually doing the job that really sets you apart from people. So that definitely helped. But my uni experience was great. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the world.
Mm,
It was great going to a city, even though Leicester's a small city, having grown up in a very rural county in
yeah.
Somerset, and Gloucestershire's very rural as well. So it was great to go and sort of experience a more sort of diverse area. And yeah, all in all, a good experience.
There you go. So coming out of uni, you obviously you applied for some of the top places in London, had interviews, they bigged you up a little bit and then kicked you back down. What then made you want to come to Gloucestershire and work for the BBC? Was there a role there? Did you apply? How did that whole process go?
Yeah, so I never thought that I would work in broadcasting because I had trained to write in written journalism. So I always thought I'd stay in newspapers. And so the reason why I didn't think I'd ever get a job here was because I hadn't learnt how to do radio or how to do
Mm,
TV. But I spoke to people who already worked in broadcasting, and that was that imposter syndrome kicking in, where it's like I can't do that. I'm not good enough to do that. And everyone said, think of the transferable skills. You know how to write. You know how to interview.
yeah.
Those are skills that you need to have both for radio and for TV, so you can transfer those skills. So it did take a little while to sort of have the confidence to be able to go, yeah, do you know what? Even though I don't know how to use the recording equipment, I don't know the technical stuff, I know I have the basic journalism skills,
Listen,
and everything else can be learned.
I say this proudly. If Steve Nibbs can do it, anybody can do it. I'm gonna send him.
No, Steve's been like he has been absolutely great because he is Steve Niz, for anybody knows, he's the BBC's TV Gloucestershire reporter, and he's been great in nurturing me and teaching me. And I think it's really important that you have those people in all walks of life, especially your career, that you can learn from, because
Yeah,
that
definitely.
that is where you do learn your trade. It's definitely through other people.
Yeah, I think just teaming up and learning from people is so needed. Sometimes what people think is like, I can do it on my own. I'm self-made. I don't need anybody else. But actually, you can
No.
probably learn and get to the goal or whatever it might be a lot faster if we learn from people's successes and also their mistakes as well, right? Seeing what they've
Yeah.
done and in what they learn and kind of not making the same mistake as well. So yeah, I will send that to Steve. So actually, when you got a job for BBC and they said you've got the job, how was that feeling? Like working for BBC, that must be pretty amazing. Yeah. How did you feel when you found out you were successful and you got the job?
I can actually remember it. So I had the interview in the morning, and usually it's that waiting game, and sometimes companies can make you wait days and it's horrible. But I got the call in the afternoon, into the evening. And I just started crying down the phone to my now boss. I was like, "You're joking? Are you being serious?" Like, I actually couldn't believe it. And I think it must have been nice for him to have to keep telling me, "Yes, you've got the job." But I just couldn't believe it. Because yeah, of course, it's like the BBC is. I grew up watching the BBC. It's known all around the world. So it was an amazing feeling to get a job here, and yeah, so proud of myself.
What about the first time then you went on TV and on radio? How was that?
Terrifying. But you know what, again, this is how the things that I did as a teenager then helped me, because when you think again about these transferable skills, so my experience as a teenager was going and performing on stage. So I was learning the lyrics of songs that I was going to sing. I was learning the lines in plays that I was in.
Yeah.
So I already had that experience of how to learn your lines. And that's exactly the same as what I could then do on radio. And it's also about managing those nerves as well, because the feeling that I don't get it so much anymore, but I still do a bit, that feeling of it's fear, but the nerves before you're about to go on radio live or on TV, that's exactly the same as when I used to be stood on the side of a stage in Taunton, ready to go on to play my part in a pantomime. So it's exactly the same feeling. But I think nerves are a good thing. It shows that you still care. I'd be worried if I didn't have nerves anymore, because and it makes you realize how what you're doing is important and that you care about it.
And it also keeps you on your game as well, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah.
As you said, if you don't get the nerves, then it probably means you don't care, which means you're probably not going to perform to the level that you can. Obviously, once we just mentioned it then, BBC is such a big kind of brand and an amazing organization to work for. Once again, talking about that imposter syndrome, was you worried about messing it up then and just saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing? And is that pressure real, essentially? Because it is an incredible job that you've got. And I think I would be worried about it. Luckily, I work for myself, so I don't have as much pressure. But at the same time, I don't know, is that pressure real? Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it would be the same whatever sort of large organization you work for, because at the end of the day, as an employee, I'm representing the company, especially as a sort of public facing representative of the company. So I have to be careful about things that I put on social media. I have to be careful about how I come across in public. But again, it validates the importance of the work that I'm doing. So it just always reminds me, like, yes, this is a job that really matters, and you're doing something really important, which is why I'm happy to be careful with my chosen words.
But then talk to me then. I want to address something, right? So you sent a tweet in October. Here, I feel like I'm doing your job now.
You're interviewing me now.
On October the 7th. And there is no doubt 2020 was a hard year, and 2021 is probably still going to be a hard year. But maybe some of us can see the light at the end of the tunnel. But you tweeted out, anyone else feel like they are just existing, not living? It feels like all of the fun and vibrancy of life has gone. I'm really struggling with it all. And that tweet went viral. I mean, you've got 97,000 people who liked it, over 12,000 retweets and loads of comments as well.
Yeah.
First, when you tweeted that, did you even expect any of that?
No, it was absolutely crazy. I was sat on my own in my flat. I live alone. And my phone was starting to go a little bit. And then it was really starting to go. And I rang my friend and I said, I think I'm going viral. And it was just absolutely crazy. And like, I just couldn't work out what it was, but obviously having read all the comments, like those words really resonated with people,
Mm.
and so many people were feeling the same. But I had no idea that I'd sort of like really touched on how well the mood of how people were feeling.
It's funny because you say that. I'll tweet my workout, do what I do, and I get a bit of a response. Then I tweet something completely not relevant, or put something on my Instagram was completely not relevant to my work, and it gets so much love. I'm like, where are you guys when I'm putting out my work? But let's dive into that a little bit, because I think so many people, obviously, they did resonate with it. And also I work obviously with teenagers. Why did you struggle so much in lockdown, and even maybe now? What did you find particularly difficult about it? What did you find difficult about it?
Yeah, I think that it was a build up of perhaps something that was always there, in terms of the fact that I turned 30 last year, which is this silly age that society sort of expects that we've got to have certain things done in our lives by that point. And so I'd already spent the first few months of 2020 worrying that I wasn't at the point in my life where I should be at the age of
What does that
30.
mean? What do you mean by that?
So for me as a female, I think it's to have settled down, to be thinking about having children. I'm single. I have been for 3 years, and that's a choice that I've made. But society still sort of doesn't frown upon you, but it certainly asks questions of, are you not going to be with somebody by now? Should you not have met somebody? When are you going to have children? Oh, you're not going to have time to have children. It's all these.
Yeah, they assume that you want children firstly, which you should,
Yeah, and I do. Like, of course I do. I feel like 30 just came around so quickly, and then I just don't feel like I'm at that point in my life yet. So I've had to justify to a lot of people around me as to why I am where I am in my life personally. I had to sort of justify it to myself as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you start to question yourself then?
Yeah, because you start to question your reasons as to sort of why that hasn't been a priority for me. Why hasn't meeting somebody and settling down been a priority for me? Because it has been for some of my friends, it has been for some of my family, it is for a lot of women my age. But I had, whether it was consciously or subconsciously, chosen a long time ago that I wanted to focus on my career first. And secondly, that there were things that I wanted to do sort of for myself before I shared my life with somebody else.
Yeah.
And so for me, I love to travel. I literally save all my money just to be able to travel. And so when coronavirus happened, the lockdown happened, suddenly those things that I had chosen to do, not in replacement of settling down and having a family, but those things that I was doing instead of, were taken away from me.
Yeah.
The job opportunities and the job progression massively slowed down. The traveling stopped. The fun with my friends stopped. So suddenly I was on my own, questioning again my life choices. And that's really where that came from, was that I realized that I was just existing and I wasn't living. And perhaps and I know everybody's having their own struggles in whatever point they are in their lives. But I guess part of me thought, would I be feeling as lonely and questioning my life choices as much if I had, for example, a partner, or if I was, if I had a family? Because then I would feel like I had more purpose. Whereas when all those it's really tough. So that's really deep, but I think that's where it came from, because I have been doing a lot of self-reflection to sort of understand why I was feeling that way.
Damn. Yeah. But it's true, and not even on a deep level as far as purpose and stuff. Obviously, I've got kids, but if anything, they keep you busy, so they keep your mind occupied. So even if you're not thinking deep, you're still kind of busy, just picking up poo and stuff. But it's true. So you said that was kind of the first couple months in 2020. where did that spiral then? Like, because obviously it only got worse, didn't it? We went back into
Yeah,
full on lockdown for, what was it, 6 months? I don't really know how long it was for.
yeah,
But then we went into another one, and obviously we're back in another one now. Did it just kind of get worse, or was it, I guess, as you said, you can't
yeah.
travel, you can't do all of these different things? How did you overcome that? I imagine you might still be in it now, but how do you cope at the moment, or how did you cope?
Yeah, I think what really triggered it was as we were approaching the end of the year, and it's sort of that time when you're starting to think, what have I achieved this year?
Mm,
And a lot of my traditional achievements, whether it was career or travel, things like that, they weren't there anymore. I hadn't achieved those things in 2020. So that's why I started to really hit a low point. I just became very angry at the world. Had a very low mood. And just lacked a lot of motivation. And that went on for quite a few months, to the point where there was a weekend when I just couldn't even move out of bed. So my
wow.
mood was so low that I literally couldn't move. And that's when friends said to me, I think you need to speak to somebody and get some support. And I sought help from my GP. And it's difficult because I think in normal times there would definitely have been ways that I could have boosted my mood and sort of not fixed my surroundings, but I could have made changes to my life
Mm,
to be able to improve my mood. But because of all those traditional coping mechanisms have gone because of lockdown, my only option really was medication. So I was put on
yeah.
mild antidepressants, and that's a short-term thing for me. That's to see me through this period. And it's
I
about
just think
trying.
you're so brave talking about it, especially in your position where you talk and people listen. I think it could have easily been avoided and you didn't have to, and most probably wouldn't have. But the fact that you have taken the courage and you've even just talked about it there and even shared how you thought, I think it's an eye opener.
Yeah,
Because it's easy. Oh, she's got a perfect life. Look, she works for the BBC. Look, that must be amazing. But actually, it doesn't matter. Like, we all go through what we go through, and we're all going to struggle in different ways. And I think the fact that you are sharing your story, and even that is unbelievable. It takes a huge amount of courage, and especially, obviously, as you said, I don't think it's talked about much. It is a little bit in education with teachers, but being female, being 30, and these whole kind of social pressures of why you not settled down, why are you not married, why do you not have kids, and then also talking about the repercussions after that, and chuck a pandemic into it.
yeah,
I can imagine it's difficult, because let's be honest, going through all those thoughts, why don't I have kids, all of these things, but then, a trip to the Maldives would solve that, but last year you couldn't do it. And yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky one, and it's hard, isn't it, with all the social pressures and stuff like that. I think it really is
yeah,
difficult. So thank you for sharing that. That means a lot. Um, Talk to me though,
yeah. And
because,
I mean,
yeah, go on.
I was
Sorry.
gonna say, it's so strange because I don't feel brave sharing it, and I keep hearing that from people, and obviously there is an element of guilt, because I know that yes, 2020 was a rubbish year, but I know that what I went through was nothing in comparison to
Yeah.
other people who had a much tougher year than me. But what it has shown me is that everyone's on their different paths. Everybody's worries and their sadness is all relative to them, and you shouldn't compare
No.
your feelings just to validate them to anybody else. And if one thing it did show me was, because I hadn't suffered with my mental health before last year, and I just thought it was totally normal to talk about it and to tell people about it, because I couldn't understand why there would be this sort of taboo around it. And I'm just really pleased that, having talked about it, especially on social media, so many people have got in contact with me, people that I would never think had struggles with their mental health, and they're in the same position. So my message, if I can have one message to people, is to never feel like, just because you're feeling low, that you're the only person that feels that way, because you can guarantee that everybody around you have those feelings too, and it's just about finding your own way of dealing with it, really.
And in your case, 100,000 people was
Yeah.
feeling. How many followers did you get off the back of that?
I did get a big boost in followers. I think a big thanks to Piers Morgan, because he retweeted
Oh,
me, and
did he?
that's what caused the absolute blow up on my social
You've
media.
made BBC Gloucestershire more famous than you brought in so much
Maybe,
attention.
although I feel sorry for people who followed me, because the reality is all I really post about is the latest coronavirus figures and what's going on with politics in Gloucestershire. So.
No. Don't lie. Don't lie. What about your lockdown diet, eh? How's that going?
Oh, it's not going very well today either. I went and got a meal deal from Tesco. Honestly, I'm terrible.
It is difficult though, isn't it? Do you feel like I was actually going through some of your tweets, and you would tweet something and people will be just on you about, give us a source, give us this, give us that. Do you
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like, oh, I look at it, give it a break. And I was like, just, do you ever feel like frustrated sometimes, because you handle it amazingly, where I don't think I'd have the patience. And
Yeah.
you'd even, I think it was recent, you would actually say it in the tweet, and they still have to comment.
Yeah, it's difficult, and it has got worse over the last year, with trust in journalists, I think. But do you know what? Sometimes it frustrates me, but I try not to let it get to me, and I definitely don't let it come across on social media, because at the end of the day, you can't. And you've got to be patient with people, and got to be understanding as to why there is this public distrust at the moment, with what they're seeing online. And for me, all I can do in my job is make sure that I report the facts, I explain where the information's from, and I reassure people of where that information's from. So I'll just keep replying to people.
Have you ever got it wrong? I don't need to know a time, but have you ever got it wrong, and how was that? How did you overcome it?
I think there've been times early on in my career where I may have got small things wrong, but that's where it's so important to learn and really get thrown in there. I'm trying to think, like it'll be things like a man called James Brown, but he's got the spelling of his surname's got an E on the end, and you spout Brown without an E, and then somebody will be so upset that they're in the newspaper but their name's spelt wrong. But it's even the small mistakes like that make you double check everything. I'm always triple checking everything, because I don't want to be wrong. So sometimes I think it's good to have those mistakes, but I wouldn't want big mistakes. Little mistakes like a surname, maybe.
Yeah, I understand that. So I don't know how much you can say, but what's next for Hayley?
I don't know. It's difficult. I think this year has made me question sort of what's important in life, who is important in your life. And yeah, perhaps my path will be different because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because I think I was on a path of probably not giving enough value and attention to the people in my personal life, because I was focusing so much on my career. But this year has shown you the importance of people and connections, and how much you miss people. So I think things may be different with my thought processes going forward.
Because do you still have to write and stuff? So I guess if a new story comes out, do you write about it? Do you record? Because I remember this is where we first met. We done something in Gloucester. It was about the knife crime. You called me and said, "Would you do a quick interview?" And obviously I came down and we done the interview. What is the whole process? Is there a long process to release any bit of content? So when we do this, we got to get like this video. We got to get it edited. We're going to write about it a little bit. Is that similar for you, or is there a team around you and you just focus on one bit of it?
No, it's exactly the same. So I'll just focus on politics. So if I'm writing something for the website, then I literally just type it up, send it off, and off it goes. Or if I'm writing it straight onto Twitter. With radio, we'd have to do what we did. We arrange an interview, and we'd probably have to do it over Zoom nowadays, but I
Yeah.
might go out to meet somebody, record with them, and then come back to the office, and then you edit the audio. With TV, it's another step because you're filming as well, and then you edit it, and there's people around you as well that help with that. But yeah, it's a long process.
Have you always been fascinated with politics, or have you just learned it in the job and you've got more interested?
Yeah, I've always been interested in politics, always followed it. For me, it was more about the people than the politics, because every
Okay.
political decision affects somebody. And so for me, it was making sure that those people's voices are heard when it comes to a political decision, for good or for bad, when things benefit
Mm.
people and when things um, cause more issues for people. So yeah, it's the people more than the politics I'm interested in.
Obviously, you can't put your own personal opinion across, but I think just being a prime minister, I couldn't feel like I could just. You can't make a right decision, can you? Really, as you just said, you're always going to upset somebody. You can't always. I don't know. It's such a difficult job, I think, and like politics in general. But not most young people. I was just going to make a fact up, which wasn't true. Do you think politics is becoming more popular amongst young people?
I think so. I think I saw it even among my friendship group with Brexit, and then Trump, and now coronavirus. It's got people more interested in politics, and more of my friends talk to me about politics and ask me questions since all of that. I think before,
Do you like
when I
that,
was
or
first
do you want
starting
to
off.
break from it? You do politics all day, and then you just want to talk about something fun with your friends, but they want to talk to you about politics.
Yeah, do you know what? If I'm on a Zoom call with my friends, or if I'm on the phone to them, I know I'm going to spend the first 10 minutes just updating them on the latest coronavirus news before we actually get into like, how are you? So, yeah, I don't mind though. I don't mind, and I do like talking about it. A break's probably good now and again, but yeah, I do
Yeah.
seem to talk about it a lot.
Okay, so I ask all my guests this question on the spot. If you could sit down with any three people, famous, dead or alive, what three people would you want to sit down with? But they can't be like a grandparent or something. They have to be famous. What three people would you sit down with, dead or alive?
Oh my gosh, it's just really hard, isn't it? Because whatever you say, you can like analyze the reasons why.
Yeah.
Freddie Mercury, because I'm a massive Queen fan,
Okay. Why?
and don't know. And my dad loved Queen when we were growing up, so we were always listening to Queen. And I've seemed to have gone to loads of places where Freddie Mercury has been around the world. Like I went to the house where he was born. I've been to the place where he recorded his last album. I don't know, like, but yeah, him. Jose Mourinho, because I'm a big Spurs fan, and I just want to have a little word with him about some of his decisions. um, and then we should probably throw a political person in. I'm going to go with Margaret Thatcher, first female prime minister, because I'd be interested to know, based on my struggles with being a female and being ambitious with my career, I'd want to know how she found it in the world of politics as a female.
Do you think there is either one or the other? You can't do both when you're a female.
I've spent a lot of time thinking that you can't, but I think over the last like decade or so, there's been a lot of improvement in that, and now when there are people that I see that I aspire to that have got both, and so that's what you need to see. You need to see those people to know that it's possible. So yeah, I think you can have both.
And do you think it would get better just as time goes on, I guess?
I hope so. Of course, it's down to workplaces, isn't it? And it's down
Flexible
to,
working and
yeah, it's
hopefully,
down
though, this
to,
whole lockdown pandemic, COVID, hopefully organizations realize that you can do a lot more from your home than you may be able to expect. You don't just have to do a 9 to 5. It can be
yeah,
flexible and it can work to
yeah,
people's advantages. I think most people should realize that now.
yeah. I hope so. And yeah, maybe it will give people more flexibility with their
Okay.
home life balance.
There you go. You've done it. Hayley, I just want to say a massive thank you for your time. I would say, where can people follow you? But let's be honest, nobody's going to be writing it down, are they? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to link all your profiles and everything in the description. But I do want to say just a massive thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been really good.
And thank you for getting the BBC backdrop. You know, how official are
I
we
know,
now,
look at
eh?
that.
Look at that. Anyway, guys, that's another episode of the Dreams to Reality podcast. I hope you enjoyed this one. Some deep conversations, but I think there's a lot we can all learn from this time, and especially moving forward. And I think a lot of it does come down to perspective and, you know, just realizing what's important. But anyway, thank you again, Hayley, and I'll see you all guys on another episode next time. Does that make sense? Kind of. Anyway, I'm out. Bye-bye.